Can I ask you something? When was the last time you got really angry? And I don't mean mildly irritated. I mean properly, disproportionately, embarrassingly angry. In the car, at your kids, at yourself, to someone else. And then you felt ashamed about it immediately after. Most men I know, including me, have been there. And here's the thing, the anger is not the problem, it's what's underneath it that's the problem. And most men never get anywhere near that because they're too busy pretending it's not fine and it's not there. So this week on the Safe Harbour podcast, I am here to talk to two incredible coaches about anger. They started their practice after working on a helpline and noticing the same thing coming up time and time again. Underneath the crisis calls, underneath the suicide attempts, was anger, unexpressed and simmering, like a volcano that had never been allowed to go off. So they built something around that. And the most amazing thing is, they're women. So join me this week for Safe Harbour, where we talk about anger and coaching. The conversation is warm, it's practical, there's going to be some amazing tools on here for you. And we're going to get to have the conversation that us men never have around anger. Welcome to Safe Harbour. Grab a brew. So, Fiona and Leanne, I'm so glad you're here to have this conversation with me. Welcome to Safe Harbour. When I got introduced to you guys through Nick, I got really excited about you straight away. I thought I've got to get those on my podcast because this is just going to be an amazing conversation. So here's something I really want to unpack. Two women running a men's anger coaching practice. And I don't ask this to be provocative. I ask it because I genuinely think there's something really powerful in that. So what do you think you see in men that men can't always see in themselves?
Well, that's quite a big question, isn't it? I suppose one we've not been asked before. And in the beginning, we didn't really think about the fact that we were women. All we could see was the fact we worked on a helpline and men rang up the helpline coming through with suicidal issues, but underneath a lot of the time was actually anger. And it was unexpressed. It was like a volcano, I guess, really. And the effects were really huge. They weren't necessarily the headline effects. I think sometimes when you think anger, you think violence, and actually, we can have a bit more nuanced conversation than that, really, can't we? It doesn't have to be as extreme as violence. That is like the 100% end of it, isn't it? And a lot of the time, it's just simmering away underneath, and it gets released in different ways. We're women. I mean, men are more than welcome to start an organisation like ours. We're not hugging the limelight by any stretch. Men don't talk. We did some research before we set up from the helpline we worked on. We did some research and men don't attend therapeutic services. It's seen that a lot of mental health services are very feminised. A lot of men don't go to face-to-face appointments. Actually, we were both qualified life coaches. Let's give it a go. Maybe coaching, because it's a bit more goal-orientated. It's largely done either over the phone or online. Maybe that might work. So it was very much, let's just give it a go and see. And here we are, 10 years later.
10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so take me back to the beginning then. What was happening in your lives, your own experiences that made you both look at each other and say, right, we've got to build this thing?
It was from the helpline we worked on. The boss actually said, been looking at some back stuff, like what's coming up. In the statistics of kind of callers coming through and website hits as well. And a lot of men, because it was a male helpline, that's why men, it was coming with anger. And it was like, anger, who's doing anything about anger? And so we just thought, let's just give this a go. Let's see if it might be something. And it was a bit far out. It was a bit wacky, really.
It was.
Just think, let's work with anger.
We couldn't find any of the services that were supporting people, that were talking to men about anger, about expression of anger, about the feelings behind that. So shame, guilt. We couldn't find anybody to support people who wanted that service. And because of our backgrounds of working within charity, third sector, local authority, we were all about being a detective and finding gaps within provision. That's something that we've probably spent a long time within our careers looking at what the gaps are and then who can fill that gap. And we thought, well, there's a space here for a service. Why don't we run this pilot, which we successfully did run, and then that's continued to lead on to where we are now. primarily through local.
Anonymised, of course.
Yes. But what I love about what we do is the contact that we have with our clients, whether that's over the phone or face to face. That's been a real boost for our clients and their families as to how Shine has supported them through the coaching, through the community-based programs. We're able to ask for feedback.
So most people, like most blokes, talk about anger. Let's talk about anger for a minute. Like the word anger, I immediately think, and a lot of blokes that I would hang around with and talk with in Andy's Man Club would think that it's a problem. Anger equals shame. Anger equals destructive, physical, something to hide away, something not to be proud of. And anger is also an emotion, isn't it? You know, all emotions are information. If I get angry, there's a reason why I'm getting angry. There's something underneath that anger. It doesn't just come from nowhere. So tell me, in your experience of all of this time working with men as coaches and as women, which I'm still really intrigued by to hear a female perspective on anger. Like, what's your take on anger? What is anger really?
It is a forgotten emotion. It's a hidden emotion. It tends to be denied, and not just by men, by women, by everybody. It gets repressed, it gets hidden, it gets forgotten about. So if we're talking about allowing anger to release, there is knowing it. So I'm sure you've heard Jamie about, I think, when he's talking to children now, there's a movement towards name that emotion. You know, what is that emotion you're feeling? So a little bit of that really is like, what is this emotion I am feeling? Say frustration or irritation will be part of anger. But how it leads to anger and that recognition with it is, I think, one of the fundamental things that our coaches do with our clients. It's that raised self-awareness. So when does it happen? And for some people, it's a habit. For some people, it will be a trigger. For some people, it could be repressed. It could be something from childhood. It could be. And sometimes it's a path, because when you're dealing with primal emotions, which anger is a primal emotion, you're dealing with the part of the brain that doesn't allow logic in. Yeah. So when you get to the anger point, it's very common for our clients to tell our coaches, I don't know the note. I don't know it. And that could be absolutely true. They don't get it because there's no understanding of the recognition of what is the thing that gets to me. What is the thing that somebody said? And it could be, reminds you of a teacher from when you were 5 and, you know, that teacher made you feel really angry. Who knows? It could be driving, whatever it is. Some of it is the recognition, the understanding of what the anger is. Some clients love theories, reflection, you know, really going, having a deep dive into what is the theory behind of it all. And some people just want really practical. It's going to help me. You know, what is it that's really going to help me to get through this? And there is a really wide range of tools, really, that work for different people. And the way I see the coaches is kind of like test the water. Think, what does this person need? What is it this person needs to be able to get from A to B, and B being the goal? And so anger itself is complex, yet does it need to be that complex? Does it need to be? Is there just a simpler way to look at it? And then we set our clients on a journey of discovery, that they continue to discover what makes them tick. You know, what is it internally that's going on when they feel that sense of anger? And the idea is that you're dialing it down so that they have a little bit of, I struggle with the word control, so I'm not going to say it, a little bit of understanding of when they experience an anger response.
Yeah, absolutely. And bear in mind, we have a lot of that external anger that our clients want to change, address. But we have men who come forward who have a lot of internal anger towards themselves. So it might not be directed at anybody else. It might be at themselves, which can have a detrimental effect on somebody's health, the well-being, the blood pressure, the mental health. So that direct anger towards themselves, not liking themselves, not listening to themselves, not feeling heard. And that can come through relationships, being at work, family, social media, the news. A lot of these things can have a really big impact. And when that's unpicked and we look at the layers of that below with the client, just with the coach, like you said, Fiona, it's finding out what that relates to and how they can work on that. And when we realise what's going on in most cases and we can name it, we can then create a plan, can't we? And when we've got a plan and a strategy, we sometimes feel better just at that point anyway. And like Fiona said, it's not, but coaching isn't overcomplicating things, as we all know. It's practical. That light bulb moment we can get, you know, within an hour of speaking to somebody on our own can just be life-changing. 100%.
Actually, it does feel quite fundamental to the gender difference, is that in a group of women, know that in something like Andy's Man Club, that kind of stuff is really breaking down, which is amazing, to get men to open up and talk about feelings. But one of the biggest things that, you know, our clients say is they feel heard and they've never talked about this stuff before. So the stuff that's going on in their head, which might culminate in rumination, and the rumination then feeds some of the emotion as well, is helpful because they're actually getting it out and they're able to analyse some of those thoughts and talking about them and being able to bounce ideas off is really helpful.
I think what we found is the one-to-one referrals are so much higher than anything in a group or within the community, because obviously people are working, they've got families or they work shifts, etc. So with us, because we can be as flexible as possible with our sessions, they're always really well attended. But to have things like Andy's Man Club, and where we live in Darwin, we've got Talk Ourselves, we've got lots of grassroots organisations that allow men to come together in the outdoors. We do a lot of work with Wildwood Days in Brinskull. So those structured environments and non-structured have been huge and really beneficial to get men having those conversations. And when men come to us, they'll then tell us they're ready to go and join a group or attend some football sessions or game sessions, whatever. Getting back out there and meeting like-minded people is really important for all of us, whether you're a man or a woman, reducing isolation.
I just want to come back to that thing you said about women talking more than men, you know, and I think first thing that came to me when you said that was, yes, that is true. I think I know my community, there's a lot of women who gather, and women are much better. And I think genetically and evolutionary, it's a thing, isn't it? It's not like a good or a bad thing. It's just the way that we're wired. So there's a way that men and women are wired differently, completely different. Andy's Man Club is one example of a great way for us men to come together and in a non-judgmental space and sit and talk and open up with some safety and permission and, you know, like camaraderie, and men sitting in a circle and going, oh, it's not just me struggling with this. I think women just do that naturally, having coffees together, but blokes hold it in. Me too, you know, and I've been doing this work for nearly 20 years, my own personal development stuff, and I can still isolate myself and still not go out and meet blokes and talk about what I'm going through, which is partly why I brought Man Club to Stroud, so that every Monday I have to go there and do that because I'm facilitating it and running it. So I have to share every Monday. What would you say some of the things are that men misunderstand about their own anger?
I think it does lead back to that forgotten emotion, that guilt and shame. It's remembering, it's about recognising that emotion and being able to express it. And I think sometimes men may feel that the lid it's just going to all explode, rather than being able to release things slowly. I suppose, like any emotion, you feel it may go from 0 to 100. And actually, within that session and within those conversations, it can be a slow release of that emotion. So it not controlled, so it does feel more understood. And the more we practice that and recognise that within ourselves, our men tell us that they're able then to use those strategies wherever they are, wherever they may feel uncomfortable. Or even if we all get rage, anybody who doesn't have a feeling of rage at times, no matter who you are. And I think there's that preconceived idea for men that it is always going to go to 100, and it always doesn't, does it?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
I think I'm wondering, women, if you go back to like the school playgrounds, women huddle together. Yeah, girls huddle together, and men are more like to spread out and play football, run around. Yeah. So in a way, I think the social learning probably starts really quite early on. The emotional language of so putting a kind of like emotional language is hard amongst people anyway in general. But I'm not sure that men have always been encouraged or been allowed to talk like that, if that makes sense. Boys don't cry. However, flip side too is that not all women want to talk. Not all women are open. They don't always say. So there's maybe with some men, you know, when something is so inbuilt, you're talking about really hard things to start broaching, and it takes a lot of bravery, doesn't it, to go into the pub and go, hey, let's talk about our feelings. And maybe it's not for everybody, but maybe so one bit of a laugh or a bit of a humour to do, you know, so maybe there's more than one way to kind of process things and do things. And maybe that connection, community and being together helps as well. And so I think there's possibly different ways to do things. And maybe when you're doing something later on in life, it's quite hard to adapt.
You know, where I think men can feel sometimes intimidated by that. Like, I've got to perform. You know, in Andy's Man Club, we pass a football around. That's the talking stick or the talking object. And when you've got the football, then you've got the stage. And it's almost like this, like you can see men going, oh shit, it's coming to me next. But we have some rules around that. You know, we have some rules around speak from where you are right now, not how you were when you came in, you know, and we don't top trump anyone's situation. So if someone's in a really heavy divorce and they just lost their dad, and the football's coming your way, you don't have to match that. You know, you don't have to match that level of suffering or struggling. It's just like you could say, oh, I'm having a really good day today, and don't feel guilt that this guy or that guy or whoever is having a bad time. It's not like there's no hierarchy to suffering. But I definitely think working with tools and making things, we did a thing in Stroud called Men's Table. It was a 6-week funded thing, and that was all around cooking. So we're preparing food and talking about stuff, and then we cooked the food over a fire, the central fire, which we then sat around and shared at the end of the thing. And blokes came to that who openly said, there's no way I would have come to this if there wasn't some kind of activity involved, or walking, even shoulder to shoulder instead of face to face. They say that, don't they? That
alongside is... I remember that being something I'd say quite a lot on the helpline, actually. If somebody needed a difficult conversation, it was alongside, you know, like in the car or alongside walking in nature. It's amazing because the feelings or the words, they're out there and they're not like towards. So anything that's really awkward, you're not having to think about eye contact. And like you were saying about in Andy's Man Club, when you're in a circle, some people struggle with that. And then some people might eventually get really used to it. But initially it'll be intimidating. So is it interesting you've had that experience of a man saying, I would not have come to this if it wasn't for that activity?
Yeah, because there's a fear, isn't there? There's a fear of the unknown, first of all. There's a fear of, and I think you pointed to this earlier, you said, like, what happens if I lift the lid on this? Like, we've got one guy who's in, several, but, you know, we're all having the same thing. But it's like, if I lift the lid on this, I don't know if I can put the lid back. I'm so well practiced at putting everything in this box and storing it nice and neatly. If I dare to let the lid off, I'm scared of what come out, and what if I can't get it all back in? Like, there's this idea of, if I let it out, I've got to put it all back in. The idea is not to store it up in the first place; it is to let it all out, and we don't want to put it back in.
No, we can let it out one bit at a time, and that's where the strategies come in. In particular, breathwork seemed to be really popular. Or even knowing how to breathe, because we don't really breathe properly, do we? No. So that was really popular in the last lot of research that we carried out. And that's something that you can do, just practicing your breath in the car, nobody knows. And these are strategies that men are then sharing with their partners, with their kids, with their workmates. And that is the beauty of coaching. They become their own coach, and then they can support others to be their own coach too with those techniques. Brilliant, isn't it? Who doesn't want to share when things go well? And what you just said earlier about the walks, I think that's why they became so popular for us. The men in the early days, the clients that we worked with, who them are still our volunteers all these years later, wanted to meet up. They wanted to meet up and go for a walk. So it wasn't initially just about men walking with men. We would go on the walks. we'd all meet, people would bring their pets, families, friends, whoever. And then that kind of structured off. So we've got like dance walks now. We've had wellbeing walks for men or during the day. We've got things at weekends. So it's all about promoting the service we do, but encouraging men to continue to practice those strategies that help them. And that is one thing that the volunteers have said when they're involved. They feel reminded of what they've learned, don't they? And they want to carry it on. And when you're in that environment with other people, you remind yourself what works and you think, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I need to go back and practice that again. And that's how things work. And then we all share the success, which is important, and the non-successes as well.
One thing that keeps coming back to me is this, because so many men that I know would say they don't have an anger problem. I'm surrounded by people that piss me off and push my buttons. What do you say directly to that man who goes, well, I don't have a... And the other thing is, like, how do these men come to you? I often get women sending me emails saying, I've seen your videos on TikTok or wherever, and I would really love you to work with my husband. And that, for me, I'm like, love to, and he's got to want to come and do this work himself.
That's it.
You know, this is not like you go off and do the work on yourself, otherwise we're finished. Because to suggest to a man that he has an anger problem, it sends shivers down my spine as a man. You know, like, how do men initially get to that point where they go, I need to go and see someone about this, and then realize that they want to maybe go and work with some women around it?
So the first thing is, I'll probably say the word problem is the problem.
Right.
Again, you know, like anger being put in that box. It is though, isn't it? Anger problem. You've got an anger issue. You've got anger management issues. Yeah.
Go and sort yourself out.
It's just got a bad name. It's tarnished with such a bad image, really, rather than having this more nuanced conversation, which would be a little bit more helpful. It's not uncommon. Like you said, you know, you might get contacted by a woman to say, I would love my husband, partner to have some help. It can't, it has to come from them, 100%. Often men do come to us when we've had referrals from bosses, actually, because somebody's causing a problem in the office. And I'm thinking of one in particular now where what happened was he was just really frustrated in his own life. And we've had others where they were frustrated with a colleague. And exactly what you said, Jamie, about the people saying, other people do my head in. One of the biggest things that the coaches look at with our clients is circle of control. I'm sure you know about circle of control.
Tell me and the listeners.
And the listeners, good idea. So circle of control, I suppose a really good way, a really good analogy, we won't go into politics, of course, is to think about the world now as it is, and think about it as it is. Bombs going off in the Middle East caused by a certain country. Can you do anything about that?
No.
Can't do anything about that. So the person who struggles to switch the news off, the person who struggles to stop watching videos of bombs going off, what is that person doing to themselves inside? What stress are they causing? And part of that stress will then feed into their emotions. And so that, I don't know, they get something was supposed to happen one evening. I don't know, shopping gets delivered or something's supposed to arrive and it doesn't. Does that then take that person up the edge? We have only got so much ability within our emotion to be able to cope. Once you start to remove yourself from realizing that I have no control over that thing that person's done, and you can take that all the way down to your neighbour chopping the hedge to a height that you don't like, this stuff, this is really common. I'm thinking about a client at the moment who was telling her a coach, their world has become so insular, they're not leaving the house because they're scared, very much like what Leanne said about that box going off. I'm scared of what I'm going to do, However, the world has become so reduced, but what are they angry now about? The neighbour. They're angry about the neighbour. A very common one is that the coaches will say is people are coming to us where they're like, people have told me enough, I do have a problem. Usually it's a boss or a partner or children. And the children one is quite heartbreaking for the person. Where we've had many where they've said, Dad, I'm scared in the car with you. I'm scared in the car. I'm scared something's going to happen. A very common one when they start working with our coaches is to realise that actually they're quite angry in the car And let's be honest, who's actually going, oh, it's me. I'm the one who's late, or I'm the one who, or there's traffic lights, or there's this, that, and the other. We're blaming all the other things instead of none of that stuff I've got any control over. I've not got control over it's 50 mile an hour now on this road. I've not control over that. But yet that stuff we tell ourselves in our heads feeds into that emotion. Yeah. Then later down the line could cause an anger response in whatever way.
And when we bring that back, what can we control? Our circle may be only small, but it's the good shit, as we say. It's our frame of mind, what we eat for our breakfast. Do I go for that walk? Do I listen to that TV program? Do I watch a bit of comedy? What am I putting around myself in that little circle there? And eventually that circle will become a little bit bigger. There are more things that bring us some joy or some happiness, depressive stuff that is in that big out of control circle.
The big one is that one thing you do have control of in that circle is how you respond to any given situation. Yeah. That's the big one, isn't it?
That's all you've got, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, if you can get to that, because that,
Absolutely.
when I learned that, I think it was the book, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camps. And he survived. Yeah. And he said that they could take anything away from me. Food, they could beat me, they could tell me they're going to kill me, but the one thing they cannot take away from me is how I respond in any given situation. Yeah. And that's what got him through. That's how he survived.
Yeah.
And it's the same, like if I've been out in a car and someone's tutted me or rolled their eyes at me and I instantly, rage comes. Yeah. But I have this tool in me that goes, give that person some empathy, because I have no idea what's going on for that guy. That he's wound down his window and gone,
Yeah. So we've got to practice that, though, I think. Yeah, road rage, again, was a really big thing that, was huge, actually, within the last lot of stats last year.
Really?
And I don't know whether there's lots of reasons, possibly. People are not all working from home anymore. The roads are busier. We've got more deliveries going ahead, more trucks on the road, the rest of it. But you're right, it is something we can't control. Other people's erratic driving, scary behaviours. What we can control is finding that empathy or compassion or understanding as to why somebody else is doing that. He's cutting you up, he's being aggressive. And actually, I think one thing I've learned from that and being aware of that myself has been to set off earlier, 5 minutes. So you're not in the stress, are you? You're not in the stress. You're less likely to get involved in that communication, which is, it's awful. We all know how bad it can be.
So what sits underneath anger, like the real thing? Is it an unmet need? Are we walking around as wounded, unmet need children, adolescents, men I'm talking about?
There's a lot of anxiety and low mood under anger that is underlying. A lot of anxiety, and as we know, if you imagine yourself when you're younger, or I look at children, my own children, family, what is below that anger, anxiety, it's just there, it's obvious, isn't it? You don't realise at the time. It's fear, it's the unknown, it's feeling out of control.
I think it's quite philosophical, and I think we could have a really big conversation, couldn't you, about what sits underneath it? Because I do think it's not the same thing for everybody. I do think it's quite complicated. And one thing I will say about coaching is you can unpick it to a degree. One of the beauties is you're not maybe going over and over it. You kind of, so let's have a think about it. Let's have a wordplay about what it might mean. But a bit like do you ever get to, I don't know, divine inspiration, or, do you ever get to the bit where it's like, this is it, I know what it is? Or are you trying different things out? Are you looking at different techniques? Are you throwing things at it and seeing what works?
Yeah.
What is the thing that works for me? Because what works for one person won't work for another. Also, let's not get away from the fact, actually, there are some anger is justified. It's what we do with the anger. There are some horrific circumstances in this world. There's a lot of reason to be angry, but going back to the circle of control, what can you do about it is the difference.
Hey, how's the conversation going, man? Are you enjoying the podcast? It's a good one, isn't it? I just want to pause for a moment. I won't keep you too long. If this is hitting a nerve, then that is probably because it's not new. It's probably because something in you knows something is wanting to change, and that moment could be right now as you're watching this. You see, most men don't need more information. They just need a moment to stop and know that this is the moment. This is the moment that change happens. You can feel it in your belly, right? It's like a little mini calling that goes, okay, this is it. Now we've got to do something. Enough of standing still, flick off the autopilot and step into this next bit. So I've created something really simple for you in the show notes, all in there. And after this amazing conversation that you're listening to in this podcast, I invite you to go in there. Take that next step. If you feel it in your body, go in there after this podcast and check it all out. It's all there for you, man. Enjoy the rest of the conversation. This is an amazing podcast, right? Enjoy the rest of the show. Anger being a healthy, there is a healthy way to express anger, and we were talking about this. It's important for young men as well, that we talk about young men and their anger, and how do we support them? How do we elders, me as a 50-year-old man, men in midlife, because it's a midlife conversation for men, how do we support the young men with their anger? How do we model what's healthy anger looks like to the young men coming up through the ranks?
And I think key with that is it has been that dampened, forgotten emotion. And let's start to talk about it. Let's have these conversations. How does it feel to you? How is it represented to you? And not hiding away from those conversations. Even on the football pitch, with my son, people get angry. That's okay, as long as they're not being physical to somebody else. So when you feel that, let's recognise that, let's own it. Let's talk about it. I'm angry because I'm scared of the impact, I'm scared of losing, or whatever it is. Let's not be afraid of having those conversations, because why should they be surrounded by guilt and shame when you're angry? Because then that rolls into being upset and crying and being emotional. Why? Let's be emotional.
I think when you're talking about extinct rebellion and talking about the anger of younger people and talking about younger men as well, it's lovely to hear, Jamie, that you as an elder are thinking about younger men, because I think younger men, of which we get an equal amount of referrals from younger men as older men, which we love, because we're like, they're learning when they're young, they're open and they're learning when they're young. Yes, that's just amazing. Is some of the anger, we can't get away from the fact that social media is creating a space which takes advantage of anger as a normal human response, but it drives more of that traffic, and it allows that person in a very angry emotional state, not using their neocortex, so thinking brain, their logical brain, to go, is this person wanting me to be angry? Are they getting something out of it? There is clearly a problem for young men, and it is being hugely taken advantage, and that is extremely sad. And so it's lovely to hear, Jamie, that you want to be part of that movement to help those young people, because I think to ignore it is patronising. I think to ignore it, that there is an anger there, an anger response that's being manipulated, I'm going to say it, and taken advantage of, is there. But also I would say about young people getting angry about the climate crisis, they've got every right to be angry.
Absolutely.
And it is absolutely justified anger. So anger in itself is fine. It is okay. And maybe those young people are showing us something, that this is a normal human response to a situation that I am in, that I didn't choose to be in. The systems in many ways are against us. And so anger in itself, is it an unmet need? Possibly. But maybe there's different types of anger. There's loads of different theories out there about what anger is, and you can put it in various different boxes. And for people who are really into that, then, that's fantastic. You can start to really look into it. Some of it, the biggest one, I don't know if you know Yahari's window. So this is about what I see about you and what you see about me, and the stuff that we can't really see about each other. There's other things that people can see about us that we can't really see. Now, one of our goals in coaching is to reduce what's called the blind corner. So your self-awareness of who you are gets bigger. So some people love theories, some people love practical stuff, some people want to hit the ground running, and some people like to reflect on it. And the more you understand yourself and you have the tools to work out what works for you, that's what I hear from our clients really is, this is what has helped me, is to understand myself and to have more self-awareness and more personal growth. The people that don't really get it are the ones who haven't really done the work and haven't really looked at themselves and haven't taken that opportunity to go, what is it that's getting me angry? What is it that is what I need to change? And maybe some people are scared of change, and that's okay as well. But knowing that about yourself is the important bit.
Absolutely.
Give me a little how-to on that. So if someone's watching or listening to this, give them something, give a man, let's rephrase that. How do I say this? That tool you just said about give me a practical, like 1 minute bottom line, to use a coach term, bottom line, the practical, what that looks like for someone to go, oh yeah, I could try that.
Okay. So if you want to expand into more self-awareness, ask the people who know you. Yeah. Just ask them a really open question and ask them if there was, you can ask for some positive things, but ask for a couple of things that if I could improve myself on something, what would it be? But ask different people in your life and you might get a more rounded picture. So ask friends, colleagues, family members, different family members at different ages. You'll probably get a lot of honesty out of children. They don't shy away from honesty. Adults tend to sugarcoat things. Really think about how often, how should we say, negativity, thinking about early childhood experiences, we probably run away from it sometimes because we don't want to hear criticism. But constructive criticism, if it's delivered with love, can be really helpful, and that's a really helpful guide. So I think really starting with that, and
So
then
give me an example of what a question might be. Like if you were asking it to me,
like
role play it.
Yeah, okay. So if there is one thing that would help me to change about me, what would it be? And that is it's a leading question, but it will give somebody enough to go, okay, well, you're always late. Okay, well, how does that impact?
When was the last time you got really angry? You don't listen to me. You're always talking over me and you don't listen.
Disproportionately.
So what happens when the man receives that? What's the next part of the exercise here? Because that could be quite triggering for a man to go, what do you mean I talk over you? I don't talk to you all the time?
Most men I know, including
not
me,
all the time.
have been
The
there.
defensiveness will tell you something. The defensiveness will tell you what is going on. So that feeling
And most men never get
how have I
anywhere
taken
near that
this
because they're
criticism?
too busy pretending it's not
How
fine
have I
and it's not
taken
there.
this?
So this week on
And
the Safe
that
Harbour
is what we
podcast,
work
I am
with
here
then.
to talk to
And
two
then you
incredible
think, one,
coaches
where is this
about
person
anger.
coming from?
They started
But
their
you've also
practice
got other
after
things
working on a
like,
helpline
is that an important
and noticing
value?
the same thing coming
So
up
we're
time
always
and
coming
time
from
again.
our own
Underneath
values
the
and our own
crisis
beliefs
calls,
and the way that we
underneath the
see the
suicide
world.
attempts,
And when we
was
have a
anger,
clash,
unexpressed and
that
simmering, like a
is
volcano
the
that had
important
never
bit.
been allowed
That
to
is
go
the
off.
thing.
So
So
they built something
sometimes
around that.
we're thinking,
And the
okay,
most
well,
amazing
is
thing
this thing
they're
incredibly
women.
hard for me
So
to
join me this
change?
week for Safe
Is
Harbour,
it
where we talk
changeable?
about anger
And if you're going to change
coaching.
anything about
The
yourself, start with the
conversation is
easy
warm,
stuff.
it's practical. There's going to be
Start
some
with the
amazing
easy stuff.
tools on here
Because
for
if you start with the
and we're
easy
going to get to
stuff,
have
then
the conversation that
everything
us
else is
men
a
never
little
have
bit,
around
well, it
anger.
can flow a little
Welcome
bit
to
easier
Safe
because
Harbour.
once you start to
Grab a
make
brew.
one little change, breaking habit, it's like a model, if you will. And you know yourself, don't you? And it's having that insight, how it feels. So does it feel comfortable to make this change? You know, now that I'm more aware of it. And like you said, then that can give you that model for the next change. That may help your relationships with somebody, how we communicate. We talk over each other a lot, but we're used to that. And we've learned to listen and at the same time. We're doing really well here.
We are.
Great.
We like this with our own friends as well. But I suppose if you were in work now, we will have our work hat on and somebody isn't feeling heard because the boss isn't letting them give them any direction or hear them out, that client will then feel frustrated. The worth will be lower because they don't feel that the boss is interested. And then where does that communication go? Does it become passive? Does it become aggressive? And then it's about working on that as an individual within that example. And you practice generally with people you feel more comfortable with. And then you might go within the big guns with your boss and practice that then. So I think it isn't about people being thrown in at the deep end at all. It's about learning and development.
That is such a good point about the passive aggressive. It is one of the most common things that a lot of men say, that they've got a passive aggressive form of, they don't realise it. And that's that self awareness with your horrors window again. It's like opening up and going, oh, I didn't realise this is passive aggressive. And it's either if it's a boss, colleagues, or a partner as well. And so learning a different style of communication. And I have to say, clients are amazing at just giving something a go.
Yeah.
And that's dead practical, isn't it? You know, it's really, really practical. It's like, right, okay, well, I'm just going to practice this new style, practice this new way. Like the thing that Leanne said about me, I was talking of it years ago, I wrote a little positive affirmation to myself about do not interrupt, do not interrupt. And it has just been like the hardest thing in the world for me to do. Yeah.
I just
Do not interrupt.
It's because we're excitable.
We're just a bit like, yeah, but excitable. I think that sometimes things that could, even though I said, I'm going back on what I said before, which is like complete contradictory. Bear with me about trying something simple. Even if you try something simple, it doesn't work. Don't ever be disheartened because actually that is really hard for me. You know, I see it as like Play-Doh, like just play with it. Like every day is a new day. Play with it and just put a different hat on and just maybe do something different. So, for example, going back to the road rage thing we were talking about before, I live on an extremely busy road in a very rural area. Years ago, I used to get I could feel it surge. I could feel the surge of adrenaline coming up and get really angry that somebody was angry that I was attempting to reverse into my drive. And I'm attempting to reverse into my drive because it's not safe if I back out of my drive. That's the reason I'm doing it. I got really angry there. And as soon as I stopped looking at people, just stopped looking at the drivers.
Yes.
I just sat there stationary, waited till it's clear, and then I back in. It's been a game changer. Really simple thing.
Because you're looking out for the criticism, you're looking out for the inevitable looks, or even like our minds can even make it up. Minds can
researching for
researching.
it.
I call it in my coaching, I call it Rolodexing for problems. Eventually,
I like that.
Eventually, a little saboteur or a judge will go, here you go, here's some evidence. Go on, give him some.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we attach meaning all the time to other people's actions. Yeah. And that meaning to other people's actions is only your interpretation. It's not their intention. The law of unintended consequences is huge.
Yeah.
It's absolutely huge. You know, breakdown in communication is absolutely massive. And if you can just play with communicating in a different way and learning how to do it,
skills and techniques. Skills and techniques and awareness. Men, so I'm speaking from the perspective of a man. I just need tools. I'm like, give me some tools. Give me something to work with. Give me some techniques. And I impart a lot of this with my clients when I'm working with men. I run the Positive Intelligence program as a non-negotiable when I work with my clients, which is a mindset, mental fitness training program designed by neuroscientists. And it brings awareness to all the 10 saboteurs. The victim, the hyper-vigilant, the hyper-rational, the stickler, perfectionist, overthinker, all of these little separate characters. Once men realize that they can be separated out into 10, plus the master judge that sits here that says you're a fucking idiot all day long. Once men realize that they are 10 separate characters and they all show up at different times, it's a game changer. Instantly they go, oh, there's 10 of these guys. So, and then I'm constantly getting them to name which one's showing up in any given situation, whether it's in a relationship or with a partner or out on the road or building a business. It's like it completely changes the operating system for life. We are living with an outdated operating system from our 20s and 30s, and now we're in our 40s and 50s. Like we don't think like that anymore. And by the way, these are all thoughts; they're not you. So that's one part of how I work with my clients, is to train them and give them tools, because men need practical tools. Working with anger, I need some tools to help me work with this big emotion that it's taken over my life and my relationships and my business, and I can't communicate with my kids because it's constantly there. You know, how do I diffuse that? How can I work with it rather than get rid of it? Because anger's never going to go away. It's always going to be there. It's an emotion that follows us around, like all of these 10 saboteurs. We don't get rid of them. They're just part of who we are. It's just that the top three have been in control. If someone is a big entrepreneur or CEO, they have a really strong hyper achiever saboteur, which is great because it's got them to be successful and achieve. But when it overflows into their relationship or their other parts of their life, that's when it becomes a problem. So anger is an acceptable emotion unless it is causing negative impact in your life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the idea of all the different saboteurs and then being able to recognise them. And I'm having this image of your clients kind of laughing and going, oh, yes, I see you.
Yeah.
I see you.
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
what you're doing now. And actually just having that understanding of the running commentary in our brain
Is
Yeah.
exhausting.
and going, oh, okay, right.
Here
I
we
know
are.
what I'm doing here. I know where this story's going. I know
Come
what
on
I'm being
in.
able to identify it. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
But also as well, I suppose, you know, like this idea of all the different, you know, naming these saboteurs is all these things are helpful at times, but I just think balance is what we need. You know, I mean, anger in itself, you know, it would have helped us to get away from a situation. When we're cavemen, that's its purpose. It's got a reason. There is a reason it's there. But when we are, you mentioned the word operating systems, when we're dealing with an operating system that in a way is fit for a different time, the where we live now will cause more of an anger response. And then if you combine that with something your teacher said to you when you were 7 and your granddad or your auntie or somebody in the street said something, that, you know, like childhood stuff, the stuff, it gets stored and it gets stored in different ways in different people. And for some people it'll affect them and some people it doesn't, because everybody is different. But then you get those normal everyday experiences. So in a way, anger is very hard to separate out. Yeah, for some people, not for others, but for some people. If you can remain calm with the aforementioned tools to help you remain calm, bring in some of the reflection, bring in all the idea about your knowledge about what is going on in this brain of mine, then you start to go on the journey, the kind of journey of understanding yourself. And you mentioned the word tools. Just the word tools itself is a very manly word, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
One of our first leaflets we had was a DIY kit.
Toolbox.
We did it as a toolbox. It was like we needed to kind of like, how
Yeah.
do you relate to men what it is? But you're a coach. It's a metaphor, isn't it, as well? You need metaphors are great. They help our brain understand what we mean.
Men are practical. They want stuff. They want, like, give me some help. They want it fixed. And like, as coaches, it's really important on the outset to make clear to, we're not going to fix you.
No.
This is not about making this never happen again. This is about giving you the awareness and the tools and the processes, and mostly awareness, really, to be able to work with it rather than make it go away. So, like, another one for me is when anger comes up, a bit like when we talk to a child, and we'd learned this in de-escalation training, and meet their anger with empathy. So this person's effing and shouting and spitting, and we just have to go, I really acknowledge their anger. Yeah, I really hear how that could really upset you. I can really see how that can affect your life. I can really feel how angry you are. And then eventually they just run out of steam, all of this stuff. And what else? And what else are you angry about? And what else? And what's making you angry about that? And then they just eventually, sooner or later, they come down and down and down and soft and gentle.
That's amazing.
And I
Anger needs a fuel, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And if it's just meeting compassion, it can't go anywhere, can it? That's really powerful.
And that's a technique.
Can we do that for ourselves?
Yeah.
So what would that look like? What would that look like practically?
Well, it's meeting your own wolf, isn't it? And giving it a cuddle, or going for a walk with your own angry wolf and hearing what he has to say and why.
Trying to understand.
I think there's two words that spring to mind for me, but, you know, these are my words. They're not, I'm not saying they're all the words for clients, is self-forgiveness and self-compassion. So sometimes you're running away from thoughts that are troubling. And, you know, one of the reasons we started this was because men do commit suicide 3 times more than women. We're always able to forgive ourselves for actions. And as soon as you start to look at yourself back in the mirror, it might feel hard if you think about things that have gone beforehand. You know, when you start, like, basically, if you're always in a heightened state of anger, actually never coming down from that is hard because you're not getting into that thinking side of your brain. So constantly firing that up all the time, it's quite exhausting and quite tiring. And where do you go with it? I think that having those thoughts that can be quite overwhelming, really, we're just going to say really overwhelming, and not knowing where to go. Like you're through a jungle and where do I start? Well, you need to start maybe just chopping something down and find a new path for yourself. And that would be really hard when you're first doing it, really hard. And that's why asking for support, reaching out, telling friends, partners, bosses, coaches, Andy's Man Club, whoever is around you that can help you. And always seek out the people that will help you, not the people that will sabotage you. Because you've got to kind of look around you as well and think who is around, who is going to help, and be compassionate and forgive and understanding.
And it's the same with our thoughts, right? If we keep inviting in those thoughts, like, why are we hanging around with these thoughts constantly? Why do I keep allowing that into my head? And it becomes a pattern. Like,
because
like carrying boulders around in your fucking rucksack. But why are you carrying that heavy rucksack around? Take a few boulders out. Give yourself a compassion break every day. Don't.
Like you said, Jamie, the thoughts, they're not you, they're your thoughts.
Yeah, and that is uncharted territory for men. And I think that is one of the biggest blockers for men, because it's much easier to stay with those thoughts like a best friend, like being in an abusive relationship, it's the same thing. I think it's the same with negative and angry thoughts. Men will stay with that version of themselves because they don't know any different, because that's what was modeled to them by their dad or their granddad or their uncle or other men. We look to men for young men, again, they look out to, like, how do I be a man? How do I do this? And if all they see, if all they're on a building site or on a football, and I don't want to categorize here, but, like, this is where a lot of anger and, like, rage sits in pubs, football pitches. And if that's what you see every day and that's what you're around as a young man, of course, it's just like an imprint, isn't it? That's your blueprint for being a man.
Yeah.
Being anything other than that is just being a bit soft. And, it's not okay to be vulnerable, and it's not okay to share how you're feeling. And so how it plays out is through anger and rage. And the young men are just looking out onto social media for guidance of how to be a man, and that's how these Andrew Tates and all these people are being able to do what they do, because they're shouting the loudest. All teenagers have a phone in their hand all day long, and if they're going, well, how do I be a man, not literally how do I be a man, but they're seeing these men and going, don't go and get a job, you can sell cryptocurrency and make $8,000 a day, and you can do this, and you can be successful, and you can have hot women or whatever. And it's just they're being fed it. And then they go, yeah, I'll have some of that.
It looks like a really quick fix, doesn't it? It's just instant gratification wrapped up in a sales package. And it's being used as masculinity, and it's absolutely nothing to do with masculinity at all. Men have been emasculated in a way, but only a lot to do with deindustrialisation and men not being able to get jobs and being tied with breadwinners. This is my belief, by the way, not the views of Shine Coaching. There is a lot to be said for that breakdown of what it means. And in a way, is it important? Does it need to be a conversation? Who are your models? Are your models the models you want or you need? And really breaking it down. And the model doesn't always have to be your own dad or somebody within your family. It can just be somebody you mirror and admire. Modeling is fantastic for people who you want to be like. You can change that at any time.
I say, like, if you want to be a musician, go and hang out with musicians. If you want to learn how to be a wholesome man, go and find some wholesome men. Yeah. Model what being a man looks like on the guys on the building site, or some great buildings.
I think, especially within construction trades and driving trades, the long hours you're away from home, you need that break, that distance between work and your personal life while you're on the road or while you're working away from home. I suppose sometimes we're linked to people who we may not socially engage with when we are at home, but there can always be some good conversations within that.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's being around those people and it's having those conversations and being brave enough to talk and be open amongst people within groups, maybe that you wouldn't generally be with.
Yeah. So I just first of all want to thank you both for taking this precious time out of your day to speak to me and all of the men who are tuning into this episode about anger. I guess I got one question to finish with is, if anyone is listening to this right now and what we've been talking about is really landing for them and resonating, and they feel like they want to work on their anger, what would you say to that man?
Work with us, get in touch. I'd say, yeah. Yes, absolutely. We've got some amazing videos on our YouTube channel from men who have agreed to talk on our YouTube channel and create a video. So there's some brilliant examples on there. So if you are interested or are curious or have questions, reach out, email us. We'll go there and have a look at those videos.
Thank you for coming and having this conversation.
Well, thank you, Jamie, and for the work you do as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to put all your details for Shine Coaching in the show notes. So if anybody wants to come and check out their work, it'll all be in there. Please go and support this work that these guys are doing. Spread the word, share this video with someone who might need to watch it, and see you on the next Safe Harbour episode. Thank you both so much. Have a great afternoon. So that's another episode of Safe Harbour. Thank you so much for being here and listening in on this amazing conversation. And if you enjoyed today's show, give us a follow, give us a like, and share this with another man who you think might need to have this conversation. Another new guest next time. Tune in. Have a great day, man. And remember, you are amazing, right?